Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, brothers and sisters who are following this podcast. Another day, another Twilight chat. Alhamdulillah, 15 days had gone, 2 weeks to go from Ramadan, and also 2 weeks had already gone, so which is a bit sad. We haven't had the good experience of Ramadan this year because of the COVID-19 incident, and the whole world is on a lockdown, so. But yeah, overall, we can just say, Alhamdulillah, that's we're going through, we're still alive. We're going through a hard time, but we're still alive. And having said that, though, uh, today we will be continuing from the topic that we've begun yesterday. Yesterday, if you remember, we've started talking about religious persecution and Ashab al-Kahf, the companions of the cave, and the youngsters who fled, their land, their country, and entered the cave because they were, they have already um, converted from the religion of their society to a different religion, and that led to their persecution. So they had to leave their country. Now, the next surah, Surah Maryam, and also Surah Taha. This is the 16th juz. They have a lot to do with religious persecution, societal, approach to things, and how a society can be wrong. And most of the time, society, the collective action that's taken by society is not necessarily right. We can see that in Surah Maryam, when he's talking about what happened to Maryam, and the whole society wasn't able to comprehend what this lady was going through and what she was doing. Also, when it comes to Surah Taha, we can see how the Pharaoh reacts to Musa and his family, and also to the Jews as a whole, and how he treated them. Dictatorship at its peak, we can see it in Egypt. So these are historical incidents, but this happened throughout history, throughout the presence of humanity. To be honest, we have such similar incidents every now and then. Even today, if we look into countries and governments, we can see similar things happening around us. There are few verses that I wanted to, or few verses that I wanted to talk about, and that is Maryam alayhi salam. Maryam is one of the greatest women in history. She is considered to be amongst the pious people of of her time, and also she's considered historically she's one of the greatest figures. In Islam, according to Islamic belief, she is not a prophet, but she is what we call a Siddiqa. It's a rank that next to prophethood. So prophethood being the highest rank that someone, a human being, can achieve, and then right underneath it is a rank what we call the Siddiqa. So, but in Christianity, she has also special meaning because of the belief, in the Trinity and all of that, and she was the mother of the Christ, alayhim salam jami'an. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon them, all of them. So Mary, she was pregnant with the Christ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَحَمَلَتُ فَانْتَبَذَتْ بِهِ مَكَانًا قَصِيًّا. So she left her society. She left her society, although she knew she hasn't done wrong, although she knew she hasn't had any kind of social contact with sexual contact with anyone or with any man, but she was pregnant, and that was unacceptable in the society, and she knew the society would prosecute her for that. However, it's not only that, it's also the fact that she cannot explain herself. And there are moments as human beings when we cannot explain ourselves, we cannot explain what we're saying or what we're doing, because people are unable to understand, people are unable to comprehend what we're saying. So what we tend to do is run away, and that's what Maryam alayhi salam did. She ran away from the society that she was living in. So she went out. And then, she was giving birth to the Christ at that time, and she said, يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. I'm gonna look into this from a very problem-based approach. So, for example, when we are going through problems, we say that we feel like life is very small. We feel like we can't take it anymore. We feel like we are not strong enough to be tested with such a test. And we say words, we say things like, I hope I've died, I hope this life comes to an end, I wish, this hadn't happened, and so on and so forth. And this kind of comments and this kind of words are normal, because we as human beings tend to forget, and our belief is in the Lord is tested with calamities, with problems that we face in life, and these problems will normally lead to us being, I wouldn't say non-believers, but I would say weak, and that weakness is manifested through the words that we say or the phrase that we utter. And this phrase shouldn't be uttered by someone who believes and who knows that the test is nothing but a purification from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's also another start, a new start for another journey, maybe, or another phase in the journey in your life's journey. So, and Maryam alayhi salam, she says, يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. I wish I had died before this. So she's actually saying, I wish I had died. And Maryam is giving birth to one of the greatest men on earth, who came to this earth, Isa alayhi salam. Yet she's saying, I wish I had died. Alayhim salam jami'an. So I wanted to highlight that human aspect of people, even people who are considered to be pious, considered to be amongst the scholars, amongst the greatest. The test is always there. People get tested through so many different things in their lives, and the Prophet ﷺ says, when he talks about people going through a hard time and tests, he says, أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء. So the people with the greatest test are the prophets, ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم, and then those who are closer to them, like in terms of their their rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the more pious you are, the more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you are, the more you get tested. But because of that strength of belief that people have, or you would have, you can get over it, because you know that test wouldn't last long. You know that even if it lasts long, this life is short for that kind of test. Even if it lasts a lifelong, if it's a lifelong test, then going through that lifelong test is nothing but just it would pass by like any other test that you go through. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he's saying أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء, he's telling us that as prophets, including himself, we get tested more than anyone else. So when you get tested as a human being, you shouldn't take it to the heart, and you should have you should strengthen your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and keep steadfast, because when we have a lot of problems, things get shaky, and the ground underneath us might start moving without even realizing it, and we start questioning things. And some people go far and beyond questioning the basics to the questioning actually the fundamentals, which of their beliefs, the existence of God, the prophethood, and other things. And these are things that we shouldn't be getting closer to. In fact, any test should assert our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So having said that, I will shortly go back to religious persecution, or different approach to religion and religiosity as well. Ibrahim alayhi salam is one of the surahs that's mentioned in this surah, Surah Maryam. And Ibrahim, he tells his father to believe in God, in the Lord. But his father doesn't. And he said, Ya Ibrahim, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ وَهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا. So this is another form of persecution that we're talking about, from the, extended from the story of yesterday of Ashab al-Kahf. So today, Ibrahim is telling his father to believe in Allah. And his father is saying, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ, if you don't let me alone, if you don't leave me alone, لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ, I will stone you to death. لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ وَهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا, and leave me alone for a while. لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ. So he's actually, by just telling him the way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's telling him. So this is societal persecution as well, and this is just a one-to-one example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. But there's another story of Ibrahim and his whole society. So society is not always prepared for good. Society is not prepared for change. Society actually persecutes those who try to change it to the better. Society is actually against those who have different ideas, and it's common throughout the history of humanity. Whenever there's someone with a different idea, with a different approach to life, with a different understanding, society persecutes that person, and that person is seen as a threat. If you look into the history of Christianity in Europe, that is you can see that trajectory. If you see into the Muslims, different madhahibs in Islam, you see that trajectory, and so many people who have died as a result. This is society, be it a Muslim society, be it a Christian society, regardless of the society. Once society settles on a specific idea, it doesn't accept any change for that idea. But the amazing thing is just like that idea that we think the society has settled for is actually a strange idea, a couple of decades ago. For example, if we look into Europe, the fact that Europe is democracy in a way, or Europe has countries or governments which are elected by people. If we look back into history, this wasn't the truth. This wasn't there, and this came through a progress, or through the loss of so many lives, through the loss of so many properties, and so on and so forth. So people worked for that. But now in Europe, for example, democracy is settled, and anything that affects that democracy is seen as a threat, because that's when it comes to the system. But let's go back to Europe or Europeans as a society. For example, if you look into footages from the 1940s and so on, the dress code was completely different, especially for women in Europe. We're talking about, and that's only 6 decades ago, and anyone who who would wear any form of dress that is a trouser, for example, for a woman, was seen as like a very strange thing, and society would actually punish that person or that lady. And the punishment is not necessarily physical, but isolation is one of the ways, and there's so many forms that were taken by society. But as we progress, that became different. So that example shows us, and now it's the other way around. For example, if a Muslim woman who wears hijab, is seen as different, and actually you get persecuted just for wearing the hijab. And when I say persecution, I don't necessarily mean persecution, in the common forms that we know. It could be isolation and other forms. So you see how within 6 or 5 decades, the Europe or the UK had moved from one side to the other side. One side was strange and at that time, and now what was strange became the norm, and what was the norm became the strange, well, the different. So this is one of the things that I just wanted to highlight about society and societal persecution. It's not only about religion, but religious persecution exists as a result of societal rejection of new ideas and change. And change cannot come within a day or two. It has to come gradually, and the normal natural thing is to, if you look into change things, to have a very long term kind of plan where you'd accommodate for time and also for generations. And so you kind of like thinking about the next generation and maybe the generation after. So you change, you can portion things in perception. So you could say, from the next generation, we're gonna have, we would need 30% of the next generation to believe in these ideas, and then 50% from the next generation, and then 75% from the next generation, and that way, within 4 or 5 generations, you change in the society. But if you're looking for a change within a day or two, especially when it comes to society, you are aiming for failure, and you would probably never change anything even after 4 generations. But if you plan it for a long term and try to portion the society and target generation after generation, then change would be easier. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ also teaches. And he says when when Jibril came to him on his way from when Taif, he went to Taif. Taif is one of the small villages not far from Mecca, and he went to Taif, and then they actually kicked him out. It was very bad. The whole story. I'm not gonna get into the details, but it was a very bad experience for the Prophet ﷺ. And Jibril came to him and he, with 2 angels, and he said, if you wish, I would bring the 2 mountains together, and this village would disappear. And the Prophet ﷺ, there is a profound statement that the Prophet ﷺ makes, and that is a learning lesson for us. He says, لعل الله أن يخرج من أصلابهم. Inshallah, I pray to Allah that He will bring from their lineage people who would believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ is looking very far, and today we can see the vision of the Prophet ﷺ. Almost majority of the, if not all of the people of Taif are followers of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is applicable to any time, any generation, any idea, any form of change that you would like to do. So that is to do with still going with that one. Also with Surah Taha, Musa alayhi salam. The story of Musa, one of the most occurring or recurring story in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam said, actually, his story and his the details of the story is mentioned in more than one surah. And this is one of the things that we need to look into. Why is this surah? Because Surah Musa alayhi salam, or the details of what happened with him, is actually tells us about life, about society, about country, about dictatorship, about fellowship, about religion, about anything, any aspect of life that you can see, about also the problems that we face, about honesty, about loyalty. When Musa goes to and speaks to the man, to the village, and he gets married to one of the ladies, and he promised him to stay for to work for him for 10 years as a dowry for the girl. So these are the things, the stories that we can take. So we're talking about Musa as a human being, Musa as a leader, Musa as someone, as a revolutionist, Musa as someone who's fighting the Pharaoh, Musa as someone who's leading the Jews. So we see Musa in many different aspects, and we also see Musa as a child, Musa as someone who was thrown away by his mother. We see Musa his mother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qasas, وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ أُمِّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا. Her heart became empty because she's just put her son on the river Nile. So Musa's story is one of the greatest stories that we can learn from. So when Musa came to the Pharaoh and he said, Ya Fir'aun, or Pharaoh, I came to you with this message. He didn't accept it, and he thought that is just a magic. And then Musa, when they had this debate, and Musa won this debate, or the magic, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just told him to throw his stick, and he did. And the magicians believed in Musa. And then what did he do? What did Fir'aun do? He said, آمنتم له, you believed in him before I give you the permission. قبل أن آذن لكم. And then he said, إنه لكبيركم الذي علمكم السحر. He is your leader in magic. فلسوف تعلمون لأقطعن أيديكم. And you would know, I will cut, your hands and your legs. And so many things that he said he's going to do to them. So we see that dictatorship and also persecution, because they believed in the Prophet and they left his religion. So persecution is in terms of as a society, we saw with Maryam and others, and also we saw persecution from within the family, like his father wasn't accepting him. Ibrahim and his father. We saw Maryam and her society, and now we see the society against the ruler. So look into the trajectory of how things can work in real society, and we can see that as well today in our time. So between the two people, father and son, between one person and the society, between the whole society and the ruler. These are stories that we can learn from them. They're not just random stories but stories with a purpose to teach us. Now that we've seen this, I just want to reflect upon one verse, and that is one verse for us as people who are through this pilgrimage. We are pilgrimage. We are in a journey. We are on our way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one day we will leave this life. And I want to draw your attention to one verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us about the final destination. Not only the final destination, the day that we will be resurrected and how things will look like. And on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. It is a day when everyone, kulluhum, all of them will come to their Lord, all of them will come to Allah alone. That means you will come to Allah alone, and no one will be accounted for anything that you've done. You will be accounted for your actions, which means we need to have absolute freedom in this life, because we will have absolute responsibility for our actions tomorrow. And that is the message of the Quran. Freedom is of a paramount importance. Freedom is of a paramount importance. This is one of the things that we need to know. Freedom is the thing that we need to have when it comes to belief. People should be free, because tomorrow they will be asked as free people, have you believed or have you not? Have you done this action or have you not? And you will be accounted for every single action as a human being, and no one will be accounted for you. You will be accounted for your actions. That means we need to believe in the freedom of people, to have, even to choose their own destiny, to choose their own religion, to choose their way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if someone doesn't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can tell them, we can speak to them, we can try to prove or show, but we cannot force them. That's the important thing that we need to learn from this. You cannot force anyone to adapt a religion, because then it is not a religion. If you force anyone to become, or to follow a specific religion, then that is not a religion. In fact, that is just fellowship. They're just going to follow something that they don't believe in, and that's not what you want to create. What you want to create is just create a space of freedom where people can learn and follow the religion after they understand what they're following, and instead of just having people who are just following a religion or without knowing what that religion is, or without learning about that religion. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. And all of them will come to him alone. Just reflect upon that verse, ponder upon it, and that verse would give you a lot to think about, and it would also give you freedom for yourself, and also freedom for the others. Would give you would actually open your eyes to the space that you should be giving to people, instead of trying to convince people. You should try to teach people. Don't try to convince people. Teach people, and then give them the freedom to choose. And that's what we need to believe in. You teach them, and then you give them the freedom to choose, and that's all. If you choose to follow a specific way of life, if you choose to follow a specific way of religion, that's up to them. You are not there to force people to believe in a specific religion or in a specific way of life, or to do things the way you want them to do them. No, you are there to just teach people and give them the space to choose. As accountability will be alone, as accountability will be only for that person. No one would be accountable for other person. They would be accountable for whatever they've done. Brothers and sisters, this was a quick Twilight chat. Just in summary, we talked about Surah Maryam and Surah Taha, and this is Juz 16. We talked about prosecution, and also change in the society, and how change can the nature of change is the what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to go through a gradual process. We shouldn't be expecting change to come within a day or two. It is a generational thing. And if you look into history and the Prophet ﷺ, we look into the history of the Prophet ﷺ, it was gradual, and it came. Some of the change came after the Prophet ﷺ had left, even hundreds of years after him. And we looked into Ibrahim and his father, and how his father approached him when he told him about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was very resistant to the message of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's between them, one-to-one, between two people. And then we looked into the story of Maryam alayhi salam, when it is between a society and one person. So it becomes bigger and bigger. Ibrahim as well had faced his society, but it is in a different surah, and we'll look into that tomorrow inshallah. But Maryam, and how a person can be weak. She was weak, that to the extent that she said, when she couldn't face the society, and she said, Ya laytani mittu qabla hada, I wish I had died before this happened. Yet she had to face the society, and society wasn't acceptable for whatever she did. And as human beings, when things go against what we want, we shouldn't give up on life. Life is very precious, and there's so many things that we can do. We shouldn't give up. In fact, we should be ready to face life and the problems and the calamities that we go through in life. And then we looked into the Musa and Fir'aun alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam with Fir'aun. We looked how a ruler and a society can face each other, And having a ruler in a specific country or in a specific place, it doesn't mean that ruler is following is good with his citizens or the people that he's ruling. And the story of Musa alayhi salam is a very amazing story, which tells us about different aspects of life, of society, of people, of human beings, different values of honesty, different values of weakness, strength, and so on and so forth, leadership, and all of that. So these are the three aspects of change and friction and society that we looked into. And then finally we conclude with the ayah وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as human beings, all will come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And what we can and this ayah is telling us about freedom. And I said, teach people, don't try to convince people, teach them and give them the freedom. This should be our mantra, our way of life. You teach people and you give them the freedom to choose, even if these are your children, your parents, your society, whoever that might be around you. Just teach them and give them the freedom to choose, because freedom is the absolute value that we need to give to people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for that. And when the malaika come, when people come, يوم القيامة, the malaika ask them, ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجروا فيها. Hasn't the land of Allah, was very the land of Allah was expanse, that you were able to migrate against persecution they're talking about. And they blaming them. So they had the freedom to migrate. They had the freedom to choose the religion, to choose whatever idea that you believe in. And choice and freedom of choice is one of the most important things that we need to ensure in our societies, in our communities. And this ensuring this value of freedom is one of the best ways that a society can develop and can grow. And if freedom doesn't exist, development won't exist. If freedom doesn't exist, everything will cripple. Because freedom is the space which allows interaction. Freedom is the space in which ideas grow, people grow, and things change. And change and freedom come together. If there is no freedom, there is no change. You cannot change things unless there is freedom. And even when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, hadn't he been asked to fight, or he was forced to fight the Meccans, but he stayed there with them without fighting them for 13 years. All he was doing is just like using the freedom that he had, a very small space or sphere in which he can move to just like preach, to call for the religion that he believed in. And that is a message for us as Muslims and as human beings, that the ideas cannot be forced upon people. Ideas can be taught. Ideas can be given the space for people, and then for people to. It is like you are in a market, and all you need, if you're selling something, just like you present your goods, and people come and buy if they like it. If they don't like it, they don't have to buy it. And if your goods are quality, then people would definitely buy. And it's the same as it's a similar analogy with ideas and religion and anything. And as tomorrow will be, the accountability will be alone. Brothers and sisters, this was a conclusion for today's Twilight chat. Jazakumullah khair. It was a bit longer and it's taking longer, but I apologize for this long episode. But we try to cut it down in terms of time, inshallah, next day. But when it comes to the Quran, you can't really cut it down. And I'm trying to go over a whole juzu in a maximum of half an hour, which is very difficult to do, especially when you have more than one verse to look into. But we will try. I'll do my best to kind of cut it down to less than half an hour, inshallah, from the next episode. Jazakumullah khair, and take care of yourself. Have a good fasting, and make dua for me, for yourself, and for everyone who is suffering this life, and to also for the whole of humanity, so that we can get past this COVID-19 pandemic soon, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.